Good morning from cold Miami. This is Dr. John Bennett, broadcasting an impromptu hangout on iHealth TV with John Minarcik, MD, who's in Puerto Rico, and he'll tell you about himself. We're also joined by a panelist, Slaven, a medical student from Croatia, and Simon,
Hello.
my main man from Japan. So we'll start things off by introducing the panelists. Hello, Slaven. Can you introduce yourself,
Hello.
please?
Well, I'm a medical student here in Croatia, at Zagreb Medical School, and I do some student societies and courses in the field of neurosurgery, but I'm very interested in pathology. It is
And you've
such
seen
a great
John,
field. So.
you've seen John's work before, right?
Yes, yes, of course. I am literally following Dr. Minarcik on YouTube, and I very admire his work and everything he's done. I would like to discuss and hear something about his new proceedings for now. What he's
Welcome, Simon. Simon?
Hello everyone, my name is Simon. I'm in Japan, in Tokyo. I've been here 25 years. I'm very honored to be part of this panel. I got to know Dr. Minarcik 2 years before I started medical school by watching his videos and learning about medicine, and then I was honored to meet him through Facebook, and then joined his global medical school pathology course like Slaven. So it's wonderful to be here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Dr. Minarcik's views on the current state of medical education. No holds barred.
I'm Dr. John Bennett. I'm the internet geek. I spent full time on the internet. I've heard about John through Simon, who raves about him. And John has quite a significant following on YouTube and the internet, which is hard to do. It's hard to build a following. So, John, welcome. I'll let you introduce yourself and say what you want to say.
Well, main thing I want to say is hello, and I'm really happy to be here. And I'm glad that Simon called me this morning, and we decided to actually make this a little mini hangout session. I'm a pathologist. I practiced pathology like most pathologists do in hospitals most of my life. And for about the last 10 or 12 years, I've been teaching now, at first in regular medical schools and colleges, and then mostly online. And now the last 4 or 5 years, I've been synchronizing my broadcasts globally with local medical school auditoriums. I've been here in Puerto Rico for the last, this is my 4th year now during the cold weather in Chicago. And I do webinars while I'm in the classroom, and it's worked out very nicely. That's me. Do you want me to start ranting and raving about medical education?
Yeah, I guess we can put some structure into this interview, John. You want to talk about how you arrived in Puerto Rico and stuff?
Okay, well, it was kind of like a natural evolution. You know, when I quit when my wife passed away about 11 years ago, I started teaching, and I quit practice. And first I hated medicine so much, I decided to teach computer science at local colleges. And then one of the guys asked me if I could teach anatomy and physiology, because I was a doctor too. So I said, okay, I'll try it out. And then I just decided to do this at several local colleges and a medical school near where I lived called Chicago Medical School. I taught pathology and histology, and it was like a lot of fun. But I noticed that a lot of the things I was teaching was very repetitive, year after year. The same questions: what is this under the microscope? So I kind of went on a binge for a couple of months, and day and night I started making these little movies about the common normal histology tissues and talking over them using regular, video technology in those days. And I made a bunch of movies, and I called it Shotgun Histology, because one of my students said, when you look at a slide, you want it to be like a shotgun. No matter where the little dots land, you want to know the name of that structure. So that was the goal, is to just take normal tissues for about 5 minutes and show the students everything that was on it. Then I decided to just put those online. And while that was happening, I thought, well, you know, I'll do this for pathology too. So we made like about 500 histopathology movies as well. And then I started teaching in the Caribbean. We've been to about a half a dozen Caribbean medical schools, taught real students in classrooms. And now for about the past 5 years, I kind of evolved into teaching in the classroom while I'm broadcasting with webinars at the same time. Because I believe that if you have a student in front of you sitting next to you and you're explaining something to them, you could be just as helpful if that student is on another continent as well, if you adjust your audio and video properly. And of course, John, you probably know that better than anybody. So I've been doing this in Puerto Rico because of all the schools that I've been to, nobody seemed to really understand the Hippocratic meaning and aim for free medical education. Every time I interviewed or talked to somebody from a school, they said, well, why do our students have to pay so much tuition if you're going to be giving it away to all those stupid, dirty third world countries? And I say, because that's our mandate as physicians, Hippocrates, is to share our knowledge freely. So the school here in Puerto Rico has embraced this philosophy, and they treat me very, very well. And while I'm teaching in the auditorium, more of a recording studio than an auditorium, because all my students disappear and they watch me at home, sometimes even before they get out of bed, because the class is at 8 o'clock in the morning here. And yesterday I went to lunch with my friend Professor Sagranias at our Chinese place, and we started talking about some of the crazy things that drove us crazy. I went totally ballistic and I started swearing and saying a lot of bad words, and I'm going to try to not do that too much now, but basically we commented on every time there's one of these new grand advances in medical education, it winds up being something that is basically good for the capitalist bankers that have enslaved the fucking medical students, rather than really better for education. Like all of these sessions now where you don't really have real professors, you have facilitators, and the students spend more money than they've ever had in their entire life to take out loans to fulfill their dreams. And then once they get here, the goddamn school says to them, okay, well, go home and read your book and then come back and we'll find a facilitator from somewhere on the streets and he'll sit down with you while you're holding hands and talking about diseases of the pancreas. Well, anyway, like everything else in our society and our planet, it's been corrupted by money and deception. Okay, so when I was done with that rant, a few hours later, Simon called and he asked me my opinion again. And I thought, oh, I can't really go crazy again, you know. This is a nice place here. I don't want to start getting upset. So he says, well, let's have a little talk about it with some friends and with John on Hangout. So I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. So what I did this morning when I got up is I actually wrote something down on a piece of paper here. I got 2 pieces of paper because I don't want to sound like, you know, I just am just shooting off at the mouth and not being organized. So I'm going to give you in 5 minutes, and then I'll shut up, my opinion about medical education, especially what I am accustomed to in this place called the United States. Now, if we had a good system here, I probably would not have an opinion. I would just be doing it. But we have a terrible, horrible, deceptive, I'm trying to cut down on the bad words, system. And I actually wrote down about 5 or 6 words as the basis for my rants. And one of them is corrupt, ineffective, evil, deceptive, criminal, self-defeating, stupid, shameful, and parasitic. And that's just the good part, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that my students in the United States have dreamed to to become doctors ever since they were 5 years old and their cat got sick, okay? And not only have they dreamed it, but they have sacrificed their personal life, they have saved their money, and then they wound up borrowing 10 times more money than they ever had in their life, just for the purpose of experiencing the joy of learning how to be what they've always dreamt to be. Well, that doesn't happen because they get here, or any other school, and they all of a sudden realize they have to become USMLE zombies. Okay, they no longer have joy. They have to compete with themselves and each other. They don't sleep well, they don't rest well. And so I want to tell you, if I ruled the world, how my medical school would be, okay? I made a list last year when somebody else asked me this, and I think I have like 5 principles to my medical school. And I'm halfway there because I teach the pathology course. And they're all preceded by the word no. So in my medical school, we have no tests, we have no grades, we have no tuition, we have no mandatory attendance, we have no anxiety, and we have no bankruptcy. And every medical student I know is bankrupt because they wind up, even if their parents are rich, they wind up borrowing more money. So what the Wall Street and the bankers have done in medicine and education in general is turn a nice, happy, stable, middle class into a credit slave class. And of course, I can't say they did that to the lower class, so the lower class are already credit slaves. And that's really, really wrong. And that kind of meets, you know, some of these adjectives I rattled off before I start talking about this. So I wouldn't be criticizing and ranting and raving about medical education if I didn't have a plan. So here's my plan. There's about, I think, 7.3 billion people on Earth now. And we got about 4 of those here. Now, I am retired, sort of, and I haven't lost my marbles yet with Alzheimer's disease. And I really enjoy sharing all of the things I've done in my life. So I teach a pathology course free. Of course, it's not really free because when I broadcast here in Puerto Rico, they actually pay me for being a professor too. But there must be a handful of people on this planet, other than the 4 here, out of the 7.4 billion, that can afford to just share their experiences free because they want it, because they have enough money. I mean, you can see that, like, I'm really, really rich here. I'm going to show you something. You see this? You know, these are like $700 socks. Okay, so like I'm very, very rich, and because of that, I could afford to teach for free. There must be a few other people. So if a medical school curriculum is basically pathology, anatomy, physiology, and pharm, those are the big ones, and then branches of it, why don't you just find a few more people like that, get together, and start a real bang-up medical school? And I think this is the same concept as what Simon told me about with osmosis as well. And it's going to be done eventually, except it basically would then bankrupt all of these fat cats that are making huge monies off of the student loans. So I don't know how that's ever going to be done. But I want to tell you just one thing, is that of all the terrible things I said about our current state of medical education, the thing that is really the most shameful is that all of my medical students online and in the auditorium have dreams, okay? And they are altruistic dreams. And what the system has done is they has smashed those dreams. So to get even for smashing my students' dreams, I have a sledgehammer at home. And I am eventually going to take a sledgehammer and knock down all the walls in every medical school in the country, because we don't need the walls anymore. John, you have proven that we don't need walls. Your system here of Google Hangouts is the best built medical school in the whole world. And if you ever saw that video by Pink Floyd, where they showed the students smashing down the walls of the school. You know, we don't need no education. You know, if you've ever seen that video, that's what we should do. So I'm basically have did a lot of ranting and raving, telling you about what I hate about this demonic system, and I've offered some plea. And I think I made a video once and I called it "Looking for a Few Good Men." And you probably have a whole bunch of those. If you could unite those men and get them to work together and share freely what they've always wanted to do, I think we could basically have a medical school which would not only destroy the bankers, but destroy the terrible accrediting agencies that force us to follow all kinds of regulations, which then jack up the price or the tuition of medical schools. So I guess what I want to say is we have to smash the system and start something good. And I hope nobody was offended. I tried not to use too many bad words. And I'm done speaking, John.
Well, thank you very much. I think John is sharing something. Oh, no.
Yeah, John. Thanks a lot, and no holds barred. We gotta start. We gotta start a regular hangout. No holds barred, and it's good to hear exactly what you say. One thing I just want to show you something, which she's not a doctor. She's a movie star. What Betty Davis. This is a quote from Betty Davis, and I think it kind of relates to what you're saying. Let me just post it up here. It takes me a second. A little technology. I just ran into this, and it kind of reminds me of what you said. And I can certainly relate to it. To fulfill a dream, to be allowed to sweat over lonely labor, to be given the chance to create is the meat and potatoes of life. The money is gravy. And that kind of reminds me of what you're doing. You kind of, living a different kind of life. Money is not the object, and that's the meat and potatoes of life. And I can relate to it too with the internet. This is the meat and potatoes of life. It's not the money. So, do you think digitalization and then democratization with computers has helped somewhat the medical education scene?
It's revolutionized it. It's turned it into something that it should be. It's going to be the first step in the knocking down of all the walls with the sledgehammers, the expensive walls.
Yeah, and I guess Slaven can relate to that because he has access to your work, right, Slaven?
Yes. I also saw the video "A Few Good Men," and I was so fascinated that I shared it with everyone around me, and I wanted to do something to find those men to start because medical school pathology is such a great thing. I think that's the kind of education that everyone needs. Shotgun histology, of course. I think I aced my histology because of shotgun histology.
Me too.
I think okay. And right now we are doing with Dr. Bennett a congress in Romania, and because of him we can make it public and it's broadcasted in the whole world. We didn't want it to be in four walls. So Dr. Bennett is doing this, and on the medical school in Zagreb, we are also starting to do some lectures that I hold on neurosurgical anatomy, and I hope that this will be available to everyone. Nevertheless, if they are at the medical school, if they're at home, if they're with their girlfriends, as Dr. Minarcik told in his general pathology course, and I think that's the true meaning of education: to educate yourself and to be friends.
Yeah.
In this process, not
and Simon, do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, to add to what to Slaven was saying, and to educate yourself with the assistance of a great professor like Dr. Minarcik, I really spent 2 years watching your videos, Dr. Minarcik, Shotgun Histology, and on all of Robin's. And as a total beginner, I had to sit there with a medical dictionary and looking all over them. the net to understand what you were saying. That they were presented so well that I was able to understand and to follow with passion, and I just made me more and more interested. And I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. And if we could get back to the basics, if we could keep this basic passion towards medicine and not flatten the passion with this horrible debt that students get into. I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Minarcik. In meeting all these medical students from around the world, are there any differences in the type of students you find, who are from Muslim countries, Arabic countries, from countries in the States, from Europe, or do you find generally that medical students are the same around the world?
Uh, well, pretty much be the same. However, I want to tell you something that I've noticed, and I don't know why, but if you want to talk about cultural differences,
Mm-hmm.
that I have noticed in my 8 years of global medical school teaching is that if I had to stereotype a culture for being the most eager to learn,
Mm-hmm.
the Islamic culture.
Yes.
And I don't know the reason. I know a lot of the things we take for granted today in science and medicine originated,
Yeah.
in the Mideast. But I would say the number one culture, religion, geography is Islamic. They have the greatest thirst for
Really.
knowledge that I've ever seen.
I noticed a wonderful comment.
Americans, I would say Chinese, although I don't get Chinese because I teach in English.
Mm-hmm.
Indians, very, very, very thirsty for knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Americans too, they're very, very highly motivated to do well and make a lot of money. They may be a little bit more demanding than the rest. So I'm not trying to put down the Americans or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to really, really give kudos to the Islamic mindset for knowledge.
Right.
Well, John, I'd like to comment from my experience with doctors around the world and the surgical community, and specifically, is that foreign neurosurgeons are more open to using the internet, in my experience, but also they look to America kind of for the knowledge. Maybe it's a monetary aspect. They all want to go to America to practice to make a ton of money without being in debt, like you talked about. But they look to America for leadership, the neurosurgeons, and they they love being on the screen with American neurosurgeons. So that I think America, people still look to as the source of medical education. Can you comment on that, John?
Well, I would say similar in pathology, mostly because of this exam that's called the USMLE. So even though I have thousands of students all over the country, and at least half of them are not the United States, a large proportion of those want to take the United States medical licensing exam. That's why I would say the universal language for medical education is English. Because people not only may be in their own proprietary or local medical school, but they also want to eventually, hopefully, somehow get to the United States and practice medicine. Whether that's monetary or not, or whether it's the desire to be where there's generally considered to be, the highest level of medical knowledge, I don't know.
Yeah, and let me just, another comment about radiology. We had a radiologist channel for a while, Radiologist TV. And radiologists are known to be the most tech-savvy doctors, generally. You have exceptions like you in pathology, but generally radiologists, because they deal with tech most of their career. We had the most traction with the Islamic radiologists. They were the most open to doing hangouts, and we actually had pretty good traction in that community.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see what you're saying about, and they seem to be open to tech. And another thing about the Indian doctors are very tech savvy. They love tech. and the based on the English system, I think they're very well educated.
I'll say another thing about Indian doctors, as long as this is no holds barred.
Yeah.
I was in a hospital for many years in Florida. We had all the cultures represented. We also had extreme struggles with the big corporate administrators that were trying to enslave us. Our practices is another way. And of all of the different ethnic groups, the groups that really worked and fought together the strongest were the Indian doctors. And I don't know why, again. This is just an observation I've made. But I have to really, really hand it to them as well.
Well, the Indian doctors kind of stick together after they come to America?
I think so. Probably all the ethnic doctors do, but the ones that basically stuck together for a good common cause, the evil corporations trying to gobble up their practices were the Indian physicians.
You know, so for some reason, in my experience, they seem to be the most facile with their hands, because some of the best surgeons are Indian surgeons. For some reason, cardiac surgeons, I think it's pretty well known in America that there's a lot of great Indian surgeons. For some reason, I have no idea why.
Well, John, can I just take 30 seconds here to make a little bit of a confession?
Go ahead.
I can recall lying to you at least once. In fact, only once during this interview. These are really not $500 socks. I paid like 10 pair for $1 at Sam's. So.
No holds barred. This is the start of a new hangout, I think.
Yeah.
Any comments, Slavin or Simon? I'm going to check the tweet board.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, I mean, reading Dr. Minarcik's Facebook posts and my own, and looking at the internet recently of all the things that are coming into conversation, religion and wars, all these things. The world is in a tough position, and some words are coming into vocabulary that normally wouldn't, that shouldn't be there. I wonder if medicine, in its basic form, could be some way that we could somehow get the world back together again, you know, through this basic want to care for people. I mean, this is really, really idealistic, but I wonder if we're ever going to be able to use this to bring us closer together.
Might be a good start. If it doesn't, it's very good for us by itself, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, you know, yeah, the computer allows us to reach everybody everywhere. It's incredible the people you can connect to on the internet. But I'd like to make one comment, and I don't know if you've seen this, John, is that my experience with IT departments of hospitals, and this is pretty well, I've experienced this in a few areas. We're trying to show them improvements in tech with the Google Hangout and being able to televise live, and I've got nothing but resistance. They just don't want to change, because as you know, when we trained in hospitals, there were some excellent conferences, grand rounds, etc. But there's so much overemphasis, I feel, on privacy issues, security issues.
Yeah.
I ran into one doctor from Duke University, an orthopedist. He was not allowed to show the ankle of a patient without the patient's permission.
Yeah.
I mean, that is over privacy, and it's strictly for teaching purposes. And you can't identify a patient by his ankle. Doesn't that seem ridiculous?
It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, the privacy issues, I think, have gone over. And I haven't had success with getting through to places like Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, which I feel should embrace this tech that we're using right now. Everyone's so cautious.
Yeah.
Scared of being sued, etc.
A couple apps that have come out that have been good in this area. One is called Figure One, another one's called MedShare, and that we have doctors, medical students sharing information, commenting on cases without the fear of HIPAA, or someone get in trouble for a privacy issue, anonymizing cases, and discussion is increasing and information sharing is improving, and it's a wonderful thing to see without fear. We need to see that. Of course, you don't want to put anyone in a patient in a position of being exposed, but I think that we're moving in a positive direction. And so with the great apps that are coming out, and I think and what Dr. Minarcik is doing with his program, I wonder, are you also planning other programs, Dr. Minarcik, or what will you be continuing your?
Pathology is what I am, and
Yes.
pathology is what I'll continue.
Yes.
If I had a couple of dreams, one of them would be to get together with some other, major medical school forces and form a totally free medical school. I think that the licensing issues could be horrendous, but I think we could probably build the best one in the world.
Wow.
And of course, my real selfish dream, because every year I go up to the jungles here and in the mountains, and I broadcast from the middle of a jungle, just to show how you don't need medical school walls. We're going to be going to some of the best jungles in Puerto Rico this year. I would say my real selfish dream is to go all over the world to exotic locations like the igloos, the pyramids, the Himalayas, and do a pathology class with the students, just to show that we don't need those stupid walls that are expensive and that are bankrupting us and turning us into credit slaves.
Yeah, I agree on that, and that's my dream too, is to live in a place where you can actually make a living on the internet. Are there any similar docs that you that have courses online for the global community? Are you familiar with any other areas of medicine that do basically the same as you're doing?
Not exactly the same way. I wish there were more, because if there were, I'd go to them and I'd learn from them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, can you give us a breakdown of your demographics? Do you of who comes to your? I'll show your station, but your website. Can you give us a breakdown of the people that come to watch your?
If you look at the number of people that registered every year, it's between 1,000 and 2,000. And they're all over the country. I basically count the number of countries at the beginning, and there's this year we had 120 countries. And I don't know, some of them I never heard of or I couldn't pronounce. I guess they're all in the United Nations. I know there's a lot more countries than that. Probably in terms of demographics and statistics, probably at the first couple of sessions, there might be a couple hundred students. But then as time goes on, they dwindle down to well below 100, simply because they figured out that the movies are better quality than the live webinars. And we've done that survey and that test many times. Another thing I wanted to tell you is, we have 4 people here, and we're all talking and listening and giving input. But when a student watches an educational movie and they're not allowed to interact or talk or chat or ask questions, they're probably better off just watching the movie rather than being at the live session. And so for every person that is at a live session, there are 100 who eventually download the movies.
Well, I agree with that assessment, and we've had a hard time, actually. I'm showing the screen of where we're televising this live. As you can see, there's a tweet board there, which the only country I had success was, can anybody guess what country, using this interface where, like, as you say, students can interact on a live basis and they can tweet questions. Can you guys guess what country I got the most traction with this platform?
I know where it is, but
Let me think, somewhere in Eastern Europe.
India.
Oh, okay.
India. I had a cancer doc, a breast cancer doc, Rohan Randahal from from Bangalore, which is the Silicon Valley of India. He gave a lecture on the USMLE of all subjects. And we had like 40 or 50 Indian medical students interacting, asking questions. And that's where I saw this interface has potential. But I think generally the world doesn't know that with this type of interface, you can interact live with the person giving the hangout. Like right now, if someone had a question, if anyone's watching, they can go to iHealth TV and ask John or anybody else a question. But I doubt if people will, because people just don't seem to understand it yet. I think eventually John will educate the world and say, hey, you guys can interact. Do you let people interact, or you have a method they can interact?
Well, we can interact in many ways. They can give chat messages. Sometimes we'll take sessions where we can televise and listen to them. But usually when they do a chat message, it would technically break the chain of thought of the presenter, which is me. So sometimes I look at the chat box and I respond to them during the break. What my course needs the most is somebody who can ride shotgun with me. In other words, John, let's say you were talking on neurosurgery, but you didn't want your chain of thought interrupted by a bunch of chat box questions. The best thing you could do is have another person with you that answers the question while you are lecturing. And sometimes if you have a large enough audience, somebody in the audience will know the answer to the question.
Excuse me just for a second, John. Someone has, Sullivan, you have another website open. Could you please close it? Okay, there you go. We're getting background.
Okay. My four big countries are USA in terms of attendees, number one. India runs a very, very close second. Pakistan, very, very high. And Egypt. Those are my four biggies. I would imagine if more people in China spoke English, that China would be right up there as well. But those are my four biggies. USA, Pakistan, India, Pakistan, and Egypt.
Well, you know, we have issues with China because they don't like Google products because they can't, and we can't do Hangouts. We can just do Skype. One comment I'd like to make, John, and maybe you could comment on too. I see medical education as kind of changing to be more online, and the conference model. I think it can be. I think the model can be a conference where you have medical minds coming together, and you have more online like hangouts before and after a conference. So you don't have to go to the conference, but yet you use the source of medical minds from there, and you put it on the internet, and you let it be accessible to people around the world. Of course, it can be monetized, but initially it could be free. But I think that's a possible model of certain areas of medicine. But that's one model we're trying to pursue. We're trying to basically center around conferences and get those people involved to do webinars essentially. And matter of fact, to hype something, we're having a 3D printing in medicine virtual conference, which is free tomorrow, or excuse me, next week. So with these types of things, doctors are expected to know so much, and there's so much information out there that I think the computer can be used as an ally in education.
John, I'm sure that you and I and Simon and Slavik can sit down and think of a million awesome, great ways to not only revolutionize medicine education, but also to reduce this high, big burden of crippling student debt. But remember, all of our ideas would have to fight tremendously against, what I call the profiteers, the bankers, the people who have a firm grip on our entire world. And you don't want to mess with them because they are the ones that are making all of the money from the walled jail boxes, which I call schools.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll take a big push. But do you? And I feel that progress has been made, at least with the computer, because it's for a relatively low cost you can broadcast to the world. Whereas before, of course, it would be impossible. But now, for example, a guy like you has a voice, that anyone can have access to. It's medicalschoolpathology.com, right?
That's what it is, and I also have a Facebook page which is linked with it called Online Global Pathology Course, or Global Online Pathology Course. We make the announcements on Facebook. We store all of our movies on the medical school site, and
It's an 8-month course. 8 months. It's complete. And your views, I think you have 10 million views on YouTube. Is that correct?
I think we're up to 15 now on YouTube. Yeah.
I'm just gonna, John, can you take us through? I'm gonna put your website up. Can you take us through it? Here.
Okay, well, it's just one page. I do it myself, so it doesn't have any ads or flashy banners or anything. But if you just look at the things that have the largest font, the first thing you see is register. So they click that and they could register for the course free.
Okay.
And then there's another thing that says view or download. So if and when they miss the actual live webinar lectures, they can then download the entire webinar within a couple of hours. Sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 hours after the webinar is over, they can then download these little things and watch them. If you click on, I don't know if this is going to work with your bandwidth, but if you click on the one we did yesterday, and you go to 1 hour and 5 minutes, you could see the class doing the YMCA dance in the middle of the break.
Let me see if this will work here. I'm playing. Is this the correct one?
Yeah. This was our class from yesterday. Yeah, that was our background screen. We play one song at the beginning.
All attendings are in
We played Life in the Fast Lane to open up yesterday.
Yeah. Okay, that's the one. That's the one. Okay.
And then after you slide forward, you can see me talking over a bunch of PowerPoints. You might see the chat box on the left.
Okay.
And then at the beginning, at the middle of the 2 hours, we take a 10-minute break.
Yeah, we're trying to fast forward.
Are you blue boxing this, Dr. Bennett?
Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Bits and pieces.
No, no.
Wash of acid from the stomach into the esophagus.
Hold on, let me.
And you had a magical device in your GI lab to measure.
Hold on, let me.
Esophageal pressure.
We're making this up as we go along, folks. Let me see if I can get that up there.
Let's get the blue box, otherwise it can't be seen.
Okay, blue box. Okay, there we go. And tell me if you can hear it.
I can hear it.
Kind of like the definition of the concept.
Not nearly as clear as if I was playing it directly. But I wanted to reinforce with you again the high quality of the movies, the video, the sound, the crisp resolution when we show microscopic labs is much better than the actual live webinar. That's probably one reason why it's about a 100-to-1 ratio between live attendees and downloading people. And that fat man is on our live video camera. That fat man is me.
Okay.
Up there in the upper left.
Never seen in Crohn.
Okay, let me see if we got. I'm looking for the part where the students are dancing. There we go. There we go.
That's our YMCA dance. Happy campers, I hope.
And what is it, John? They had to dance to get a passing mark?
Yeah, no. If they didn't dance, I told them I'd flunk them.
That's great.
And I took the biggest guy and I made him stand by the door, and I said, "Don't let anybody out until they're done dancing."
You know, a quick story, John. When I was in medical school in Philadelphia, the medical school classes, there was no one that went. We had one student that went and transcribed it, and they would give it to their fellow students, but there'd be 1 or 2 students in the audience. That's it. That's it. And they would just pass out, you know, the information that the professor had to say.
John, now we should understand that the actual lecture notes are better than the lecture.
Yeah.
At least better quality in terms of audio and video.
Yeah, so actually that preceded the digital revolution. Kids weren't going to class. Now, I don't know if that's typical of other schools.
The overall in the United States, pathology is a second-year course. Overall attendance, if it's not mandatory, is 10% or less.
Really? So the students
Yes.
don't go to class, they basically do the work on their own, if at all.
And don't forget, it's also right before their steps, and they're also burned out from the first year. So there's a lot of reasons, but overall, only 10% of second-year students attend auditorium pathology classes,
Oh, okay.
including my class.
No.
What is your experience, Slaven?
Can I just comment on this? Because I noticed that on our neurosurgical, how can we call them, seminars, people can't come because they don't have, they can't be there at the specific time. So I think this internet way is far better because you can watch it whenever it suits you. And also, I would like to recall two moments from medical school pathology. Dr. Minarcik, which I think describe the atmosphere and some of the ambience that you get there. There was a moment on very last webinar on the general pathology. Dr. Minarcik put on the screen "Imagine," a song of John Lennon, and he sang with us. He said, "Buzzers, sing along," and we all sang. And I think that's a true academic community. And the other webinar, I think it was hemodynamic disorders. Dr. Minarcik didn't just put all the, as he calls it, rote pathology, I think, facts that you need to memorize. He invited an internist. And then he spoke to us about coagulation disorders, how they are clinically implied, and how do you use them in your clinical practice. And it's such a great webinar, about 2 hours. I enjoyed every second. I think I'll remember it my whole life because
I had a hard time understanding. Did you guys understand?
So some
Some
of
of
it,
it, yeah.
the audio,
It's a good thing, Sean.
mostly I understand. Yes.
Lectures.
Yeah. But, yeah.
But yeah, I think yeah, medical education will become more on the net. Maybe we can organize it more, John, and I'll certainly turn people your way that that are doing things similar to you. I'm not sure if there's anyone else doing it. Of course, I love to meet doctors that like to do hangouts, and I appreciate you coming out today, John. And,
Thank you. I'm really, really honored, even to the point of being a little embarrassed, but it's a big thrill to be here and hear everybody say nice things about my course.
Well,
I'm really happy.
Thank you.
John, maybe this could be the start of a new occasional show called No Holds Barred.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you want to say something, just contact Simon or me, and we'll do a show, and we'll maybe build it up and publicize it.
And we don't have to worry if there's a little church lady in the back row that goes into the dean's office and complains because we said the word fuck. We can say whatever we want.
Well, I guess that's a test. That's a test right there. Okay, John, I'll go off the air and then we'll chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rock on, buzzards.
Rock on.